Chapter 1. The Morning Rush. The alarm shrieked at 6 a.m., a sound that was both a cruel jolt and a comforting rhythm to Mark. Sunlight, still shy, crept through the gaps in the blinds, casting stripes across the worn rug of his son's bedroom. Leo, all of 7 years old, with a mop of unruly brown hair that defied even the most determined comb, was still a lump under his superhero duvet. Mark patted over, a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Leo, buddy, time to wake up. School day." Leo stirred, a sleepy groan escaping him. "5 more minutes, Dad?" "Not today, sport. The bus won't wait, and Mrs. Gable will have donuts if you're late for the reading circle." That usually did the trick. Leo's eyes popped open, a spark of motivation igniting within them. Donuts were a powerful incentive. Mark moved into the kitchen, the familiar scent of coffee already brewing. He loved this quiet pre-dawn hour, the calm before the storm of the day. He poured 2 bowls of cereal, setting one on Leo's usual spot at the small scuffed table. While Leo wrestled with his shoelaces in the hallway, Mark quickly scanned the day's schedule tacked to the fridge. Dentist appointment after school, a quick stop at the grocery store, and then home for homework and dinner. It was a tight schedule, but manageable. He'd learned to be a master of efficiency, a skill honed by necessity. Leo finally appeared, a bright red dinosaur bowl clutched in his hands. "Dad, can we get the fruity kind today? The ones with the little marshmallows?" Mark smiled. "Maybe tomorrow, bud. We're out of the orange ones." He ruffled Leo's hair, feeling a familiar swell of affection. This small routine, the breakfast negotiations, the hurried goodbyes, it was the bedrock of their life. He watched Leo stuff his backpack with books, making sure his lunchbox, packed the night before, was secure. "Did you remember your permission slip for the field trip?" Mark asked, double-checking. Leo's face paled slightly. I think so." He rummaged through the overflowing pockets of his jacket. A crumpled paper emerged, a triumphant grin spreading across Leo's face. "Found it." "Good job," Mark said, relief washing over him. He'd learned that vigilance was key. Missing a permission slip could derail an entire school day of excitement for Leo. He kissed Leo's forehead, the faint scent of toothpaste and sleep clinging to his skin. "Have a great day at school, buddy. Listen to your teacher." As Leo scurried out the front door, backpack bouncing, Mark watched him disappear down the street, a small figure swallowed by the growing daylight. A pang of something, pride, a touch of loneliness, a fierce protectiveness. He closed the door, the quiet of the empty house a stark contrast to the morning's cheerful chaos. Time to get ready for work. Chapter 2. The Weight of Responsibility. Mark's job as a software engineer was demanding, a world of intricate code and complex problem-solving, but today his mind kept drifting back to Leo. He'd been unusually quiet at breakfast, his usual chatter replaced by a thoughtful silence. Mark had initially dismissed it as preschool jitters, but a nagging feeling persisted. He'd noticed Leo seemed a little withdrawn at the school gate too, not his usual boisterous self. During a rare lull in his workday, Mark found himself scrolling through his phone, not for work emails, but for any sign of normalcy. He saw photos of friends' families on vacation, their lives seemingly effortless and carefree. A familiar ache, a longing for a shared burden, a partner to navigate these waters with, would sometimes surface. He had been on his own for 5 years now, ever since Sarah had left. The word itself still felt hollow, inadequate to describe the void she'd left behind. He pushed the thoughts away. Dwelling on the past wouldn't help Leo. His son needed him present, strong, and engaged. He tried to focus on the lines of code on his screen, but the image of Leo's thoughtful gaze kept intruding. Was something bothering him at school? A disagreement with a friend? Or something more? The dentist appointment loomed after work. Mark always dreaded these, not for himself, but for Leo. Leo was brave, but the sterile environment, the whirring tools, could be unsettling. Mark always made sure to be there, a calming presence, to hold Leo's hand and offer reassurances. He'd learned that small gestures of support could make a world of difference. He remembered Leo's last checkup, how he'd squirmed and worried, convinced the dentist was going to pull all his teeth. Mark had held him close, explaining what was happening, reassuring him that it was just a cleaning. Leo had come out of it a little shaky, but proud of himself for being brave. Mark had praised him lavishly, making it a small victory to celebrate. As the afternoon wore on, Mark felt the familiar pressure of balancing work and fatherhood. He juggled conference calls with mental checklists for dinner and Leo's upcoming soccer practice. He loved Leo more than anything, but some days the sheer weight of responsibility felt immense. He longed for an adult to share the load, to offer a different perspective, or just to vent to. But he was the captain of this ship, and he would steer it, come what may. He glanced at the clock, the dentist's office a growing concern in his mind. He needed to leave soon to make sure he wasn't late. Chapter 3: The Dentist's Chair. Chen's dental office was a symphony of hushed tones and the gentle rustle of magazines. Leo sat beside Mark, his small hands clasped tightly in his lap. His eyes, wide and a little apprehensive, darted around the room, taking in the brightly colored posters of healthy teeth and the collection of children's books that seemed to offer little comfort. "It's okay, bud," Mark said, his voice a low rumble. "Dr. Chen is really nice. She'll just count your teeth and make sure they're all strong." Leo nodded, but his grip on Mark's arm tightened. "What if she uses the pointy thing?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Mark suppressed a sigh. He'd explained the dental tools before, but the reality of them was clearly more daunting than the explanation. "That's just to clean them, Leo," he said. "It's like a tiny toothbrush for your teeth. It doesn't hurt." A nurse called Leo's name, her voice cheerful and practiced. Leo's eyes widened further, and he clung to Mark's leg for a moment. Mark knelt down, meeting his son's gaze. "You're going to be great. I'll be right here, watching." He gave Leo a reassuring squeeze, then watched as his son, with a wobbly smile, followed the nurse into the examination room. Mark settled back into the chair, his gaze fixed on the doorway. He could hear the muffled sounds of Leo's voice, punctuated by the gentle, reassuring tones of Dr. Chen. He imagined Leo in the chair, his mouth propped open, the bright light shining down. He pictured Leo's small face, trying to be brave, trying to follow instructions. A few minutes later, Dr. Chen appeared at the doorway. "Mark, everything looks good. Leo's teeth are very healthy. He did a wonderful job." Mark's shoulders sagged with relief. He stood up, a smile finally reaching his eyes. When Leo emerged, he was beaming. A small plastic dinosaur figurine clutched in his hand, a prize for his bravery. "I told you it would be okay," Mark said, ruffling Leo's hair. "You were a superstar in there." Leo proudly displayed his dinosaur. "Dr. Chen said I have strong teeth, like a T-Rex." Mark laughed, a genuine hearty sound. "That's my boy. T-Rex strong." As they walked out of the office, the earlier apprehension gone, replaced by a sense of accomplishment, Mark felt a surge of pride. He was glad he could be there for these moments, the small victories that built Leo's confidence. He knew there would be bigger challenges ahead, but for now, this was enough. He steered Leo towards the car, already thinking about the grocery store and the quiet drive home. Chapter 4: The Grocery Store Tango. The fluorescent lights of the supermarket hummed with a low, steady drone, illuminating aisles stocked with an overwhelming array of food. For Mark, the grocery store was a battlefield of choices, a constant negotiation between Leo's desires and his own budget and nutritional goals. Today, it felt particularly challenging. Leo was still buzzing from his dentist victory, his energy levels high and his requests multiplying. "Dad, can we get the superhero cookies?" Leo asked, pointing to a brightly colored package on a lower shelf. Mark scanned the aisle. "We have cookies at home, buddy. Remember the ones we baked last weekend?" Leo's lower lip wobbled. "But these have sparkles. Sparkles aren't very good for your teeth. Remember what Dr. Chen said?" Mark countered gently, steering Leo towards the fruit section. "How about some strawberries? They're super delicious and good for you." Leo grudgingly agreed, his eyes still occasionally straying towards the tempting cookie aisle. Mark loaded the cart with essentials: milk, bread, chicken, and a variety of vegetables. He knew the drill. One wrong move, one lapse in attention, and the cart would be filled with sugary cereals, and brightly packaged snacks that offered little nutritional value. As they navigated the aisles, Mark found himself mentally calculating. Dinner would be chicken stir-fry with broccoli and rice. He needed to make sure he had all the ingredients. He checked his list, ticking off items as he placed them in the cart. Leo, surprisingly, was being relatively well-behaved, his attention momentarily captured by the towering displays of colorful boxes. However, the dairy section proved to be a minor crisis. Leo, spotting a particular brand of yogurt with a cartoon character on it, planted himself firmly in front of the refrigerated case. "I want this one, Dad, not the plain one," Mark sighed. He'd opted for plain yogurt to avoid added sugar, but Leo was now in full protest mode. "Leo, we've talked about this. The plain yogurt is healthier. You can add fruit to it if you want." "No, I want that one." Leo's voice rose, drawing the attention of a few shoppers. Mark felt a flush of embarrassment. He hated making a scene, but he also knew he couldn't give in to every whim. "Leo, we're not getting that one," Mark said firmly, his voice steady but determined. He gently pulled the cart away, leaving a disgruntled Leo to follow. He felt a twinge of guilt, but he knew he was doing the right thing. He'd try to make the plain yogurt more appealing later, maybe with a drizzle of honey or some fresh berries. The rest of the shopping trip was a delicate dance. Mark kept Leo engaged by letting him choose certain fruits or vegetables, giving him small tasks like finding the pasta. By the time they reached the checkout, the cart was full, and Mark's wallet felt a little lighter. But he'd managed to strike a balance between Leo's desires and his own responsibilities. He helped Leo load the bags into the car, a sense of weary accomplishment settling over him. One more chore done. Chapter 5. Homework and Hopes. The scent of chicken stir-fry filled the air as Mark started preparing dinner. Leo sat at the kitchen table, his homework spread out before him. The recent excitement of the dentist and the grocery store adventure had faded, replaced by the familiar hum of homework. Mark glanced at Leo's math worksheet. Fractions. Leo always struggled with fractions. "How's it going, champ?" Mark asked, stirring the vegetables in the wok. Leo sighed, a heavy, dramatic sound. "It's hard, Dad. I don't get it." He pushed the paper away, his brow furrowed in frustration. Mark walked over, wiping his hands on his apron. He sat down beside Leo, looking at the worksheet. "Okay, let's break it down. What part is confusing you?" He pointed to a problem involving dividing a pizza into equal slices. "Imagine this pizza is for us. If we cut it into 8 slices, and you eat 2, what fraction of the pizza did you eat?" Leo chewed on his lip, his eyes tracking Mark's finger. 2 out of 8? Exactly. Mark's voice was encouraging. "And we can even make that simpler. If we cut the pizza in half, how many slices would that be?" Slowly, painstakingly, they worked through the problems. Mark used analogies, drew diagrams, and even resorted to using actual pizza slices, cut into paper approximations, to illustrate the concepts. He remembered his own struggles with math, the feeling of being lost in a sea of numbers. He wanted to make it easier for Leo, to foster a love of learning rather than a fear of failure. After what felt like an eternity, Leo's face lit up. "So, 2 out of 8 is the same as 1 out of 4. You got it." Mark beamed, clapping Leo on the back. "You're a natural-born mathematician." Leo's pride was palpable. He erased the incorrect answers with renewed vigor, his earlier frustration replaced by a determined focus. Mark watched him, a familiar warmth spreading through him. These moments, these small breakthroughs, were what made it all worthwhile. He was not just providing for Leo, he was nurturing him, helping him grow. As Leo finished his worksheet, Mark started setting the table. "Almost dinner time. Then we can relax a little." Leo looked up, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Dad, can we go to the park tomorrow? After school?" Mark considered it. It would mean a later dinner, a rushed homework session the next day. But Leo's hopeful eyes were hard to resist. "Okay, buddy, we can do that. But you have to finish your reading before we go." Leo grinned, a wide, happy smile that erased any lingering traces of homework frustration. "Deal." Mark watched his son, his heart full. He hoped for a bright future for Leo, filled with learning, laughter, and opportunities. He hoped he was doing enough, that he was giving Leo everything he needed. The responsibility was immense, but seeing Leo's joy, His growing confidence made every effort feel worthwhile. He was Leo's world, and he would do everything in his power to make it a good one. Chapter 6. The Park and the Past. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park as Mark pushed Leo on the swing. The rhythmic creak of the chains, the delighted squeals of his son, were a balm to Mark's soul. Leo's laughter, pure and uninhibited, filled the air, a sound Mark cherished above all others. He pushed higher, watching Leo's legs pump with enthusiasm, his face alight with pure joy. Other parents were scattered around the park, some chatting, others engrossed in their phones. Mark found himself observing them, a fleeting thought of shared companionship crossing his mind. He saw a mother gently help her daughter down from the slide, a father patiently explaining the rules of tag to a group of excited children. He missed that easy camaraderie, the unspoken understanding that came with shared parenting. As Leo reached the apex of his swing, his legs kicking out towards the sky, Mark's gaze drifted to a couple sitting on a nearby bench. They were laughing, their heads close together. A wave of melancholy washed over him, a sharp reminder of what he'd lost. It had been 5 years since Sarah had walked out, 5 years of navigating parenthood alone. The initial shock had long since subsided, replaced by a quiet resignation. But sometimes, in moments like these, the ache of absence was still surprisingly sharp. He remembered picnics in this very park. Sarah pushing Leo on the swings, her gentle smile as she watched him. Those memories, once so vivid and comforting, now carried a bittersweet tinge. They were precious remnants of a life that no longer existed, a constant reminder of the partnership that had dissolved. Leo suddenly let out a whoop, demanding to be pushed even higher. Mark refocused, his attention snapping back to the present. "Hang on tight, champ," he called, giving the swing an extra strong push. He pushed away the resurfacing memories, the longing for what was lost. Leo needed him here, now, fully present. Later, as they sat on a park bench sharing a juice box, Leo pointed to a group of children playing catch. "Dad, can I play with them?" Mark hesitated for a moment. Leo was a little shy, and sometimes struggled to join new groups. But he knew Leo needed to practice these social skills. "Sure, go on, just be polite and ask if you can join." Leo looked a little nervous, but he nodded and walked towards the group. Mark watched him, his heart in his throat, as Leo approached them, and after a brief conversation was invited to join their game. A small smile touched Mark's lips. Leo was braver than he thought. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the park, Mark called Leo over. "Time to go home, buddy. We've got dinner to eat." Leo, flushed and happy, ran towards him, his movements a little clumsy from exertion. He leaned against Mark, catching his breath. "That was fun, Dad," he said, his voice filled with contentment. Mark wrapped an arm around his son's shoulders, a sense of peace settling over him. The park had brought both joy and a familiar pang of loneliness. But seeing Leo happy, seeing him grow and connect, made it all worthwhile. He knew he was doing his best, and for Leo, that had to be enough. Chapter 7. The Sleepy Headaches. The following week, Mark noticed a subtle shift in Leo. The boundless energy that usually characterized him seemed to be waning. He was still his cheerful self, but there were moments of quiet, of unusual fatigue. He'd yawn frequently during story time, his eyelids drooping even before the last page was turned. One evening, while Mark was reading Leo a bedtime story, Leo suddenly clutched his head. "Ow, Dad, my head hurts." Mark put the book down, his brow furrowing with concern. He gently felt Leo's forehead. "You don't feel warm, bud. Is it a big hurt?" Leo nodded, his eyes squeezing shut. "Yeah, like a throb." Mark sat on the edge of Leo's bed, his hand resting on his son's small back. He'd experienced migraines himself, the crushing pressure behind the eyes, the sensitivity to light and sound. He wondered if Leo was too young for such things, or if it was something else. "Does it hurt when I talk?" Mark asked softly. "A little," Leo whispered. Mark dimmed the bedside lamp, creating a softer, more subdued light. He decided against calling Sarah. Their co-parenting relationship was cordial but distant, and he didn't want to cause unnecessary alarm. He would manage this. He'd learn to trust his instincts as a father. He stayed with Leo for a while, talking in a hushed voice, telling him about his day at work, about the funny thing the office cat had done. Leo, despite his discomfort, seemed to find comfort in Mark's presence. Slowly, the throbbing seemed to subside, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. Leo drifted off to sleep, his breathing even and peaceful. The next morning, Leo seemed better, his usual energetic self. But the memory of his sleepy headache lingered in Mark's mind. He made a mental note to keep an eye on Leo, to watch for any recurring symptoms. He decided to schedule a doctor's appointment, just to be sure. Better safe than sorry, he always told himself. During breakfast, Leo was quieter than usual, his eyes a little shadowed. "Are you sure you feel okay to go to school, buddy?" Mark asked, his concern evident. Leo nodded, though his enthusiasm seemed muted. "Yeah, Dad, I think so." Mark walked Leo to the bus stop, a knot of worry tightening in his stomach. He watched the yellow bus pull away, Leo's small face pressed against the window. He hoped it was just a fluke, a bad night's sleep. But he also knew that as a single parent he was the first line of defense. He had to be vigilant, to anticipate potential problems, and to be there for Leo, no matter what. Chapter 8. A Father's Instinct. The doctor's office was quiet, a stark contrast to the usual hum of activity at Leo's school or the playground. Dr. Ramirez was a kind woman with a gentle smile, her presence immediately putting Leo at ease. Mark sat beside his son, his own anxiety a low hum beneath the surface. He'd explained Leo's symptoms, the headaches, the fatigue, the occasional withdrawal, and now he waited for the doctor's assessment. Dr. Ramirez performed a thorough examination, checking Leo's eyes, ears, and reflexes. She asked Leo questions directly, encouraging him to describe his symptoms in his own words. Leo, usually reticent with strangers, seemed to open up, describing the throb and the tiredness with a surprising clarity. After the examination, Dr. Ramirez sat back, her expression thoughtful. "Leo, you're a very healthy young man," she began, her voice reassuring. "Your eyes are strong and your reflexes are excellent." She turned to Mark. "I don't see any immediate signs of anything serious. Sometimes young children experience headaches due to a variety of factors: stress, dehydration, changes in sleep patterns, even eye strain." Mark nodded. He'd considered all of those. "He's been a bit stressed lately with schoolwork, and we haven't been as diligent with his water intake as we should be." "Exactly," Dr. Ramirez agreed. "I recommend we focus on the basics. Ensure he's getting plenty of fluids, a consistent sleep schedule, and perhaps a little more downtime. If these headaches persist or worsen, or if you notice any other concerning symptoms, please don't hesitate to call us. We can consider further testing if needed." Relief washed over Mark. It wasn't a serious illness, just a common childhood ailment. He felt a surge of gratitude for Dr. Ramirez's careful examination and clear explanation. He'd been so worried, his mind conjuring up worst-case scenarios. As they left the office, Leo, armed with a sticker from Dr. Ramirez, seemed to bounce back, his fatigue replaced by his usual youthful exuberance. "Can we go get ice cream, Dad?" he asked, his eyes sparkling. Mark chuckled. "After we get some water, champ." He bought a large bottle of water from a nearby convenience store, watching with satisfaction as Leo drank it down. He knew he was being extra cautious, perhaps even a little overprotective, but that was his nature. He was Leo's sole protector, his advocate. Walking home, hand in hand with Leo, Mark felt a renewed sense of purpose. His father's instinct had been to worry, but his rational mind had sought professional guidance. The outcome was positive, and he felt equipped to manage Leo's health moving forward. He was learning, growing, and becoming a more confident parent with each challenge. He knew there would be more bumps in the road, but for now, the path ahead seemed a little clearer. Chapter 9. A Glimmer of Connection. The following Saturday, Mark decided it was time to reach out. He'd been putting it off, navigating the waters of co-parenting with Sarah, with a careful, polite distance. But Leo's recent headaches had stirred a new resolve in him. He wanted Leo to have a strong connection with both his parents, even if their relationship as a couple was in the past. He found Sarah's number in his contacts, the digits feeling both familiar and foreign. He hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and pressed call. It rang for a few moments before her voice, clear and slightly surprised, answered. "Mark?" "Hi, Sarah," he said, trying to keep his tone casual. "Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "No, it's fine. What's up?" Her voice was polite, but there was a hint of reserve. "He's been having a few headaches lately, and we had him to the doctor. Everything's okay, thankfully. But it made me think." He paused, searching for the right words. "I think it would be good for Leo if we made more of an effort to coordinate. Maybe a quick call once a week, just to check in on how he's doing, share any concerns, that sort of thing." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Mark held his breath, unsure of her reaction. He knew their divorce had been difficult, and there had been a period of strain. "That's a good idea, Mark," Sarah finally said, her voice softening slightly. "I've been meaning to. I just haven't known how to. Things have been so separate." "I know," Mark replied, "but Leo deserves for us to be a team, even if it's just for him." "You're right," she said. "How about we try a quick call every Sunday evening, say around 7? Mark felt a genuine sense of relief. "Thanks." They discussed a few minor things, Leo's upcoming soccer practice, a school project he was excited about. It wasn't a deep personal conversation, but it was a start. It was a step towards rebuilding a bridge, a professional and parental partnership for Leo's sake. After they hung up, Mark leaned back against the wall, a small smile playing on his lips. It was a fragile connection, built on necessity and a shared love for their son, but it was a connection nonetheless. He knew it wouldn't erase the past, or magically create the family unit they'd once envisioned. But it was a step in the right direction, a promise of more stability and support for Leo. He hoped this new approach would contribute to Leo's overall well-being, easing some of the pressures he'd been feeling. Chapter 10. The Promise of Tomorrow. The Sunday evening call with Sarah had been surprisingly easy. They'd discussed Leo's week, his triumphs and minor setbacks, and made plans for the upcoming weekend. It was a practical, business-like conversation, devoid of the emotional baggage that had once complicated their interactions. Mark felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had taken a step towards creating a more unified front for Leo, and it had been met with a willingness to cooperate. That night, tucking Leo into bed, Mark felt a profound sense of peace. Leo was sleeping soundly, his face relaxed and free of any tension. The recent headaches seemed to have subsided, replaced by a more consistent, restful sleep. Mark had been diligent with fluids, ensured a regular bedtime, and spent extra time talking with Leo about his day. He'd also noticed Leo seemed less anxious, more confident in his interactions at school. The tentative steps towards better co-parenting with Sarah, combined with consistent care, seemed to be making a positive impact. Mark sat on the edge of Leo's bed, watching his son breathe. He thought about the journey they'd been on. The early days of single parenthood had been a whirlwind of exhaustion, doubt, and fierce determination. There had been moments when he'd felt utterly overwhelmed, questioning his ability to do it all alone. But he had, fueled by an unshakable love for Leo. He'd learned to be patient, resourceful, and resilient. He'd learned to ask for help when he needed it, and to trust his own instincts. He'd discovered a strength within himself he never knew he possessed. And he'd learned that even in the face of loss and difficulty, new beginnings were always possible. The renewed connection with Sarah was a testament to that. Mark kissed Leo's forehead, a silent promise whispered into the stillness of the room. He would continue to be Leo's rock, his protector, his biggest cheerleader. He would navigate the challenges, celebrate the victories, and nurture his son's dreams. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but he faced it with a quiet confidence, a deep well of love, and the comforting knowledge that he wasn't entirely alone in this journey anymore. The dawn of each new day brought with it the promise of shared effort and a brighter future for his beloved son.